Hi. Hey, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Well, I did it. I got my laser mounted on my sled for my table saw. First off, let me explain. The laser itself, I have two of them. This is my small one. This is my utility cross-cut sled. I use this for most cuts. It's nice straight 90. I can move my blade at 45 or 90. And it's only for one thing, but I use it all the time. Now, I did put a plate on here with a center post, so I can put it on here, but I don't think I'll ever use it on here. You want to know the truth. But I have found that laser is actually going to be extremely useful on my regular sled. I have the Incra Micro 5000, and even if you have your own really nice built sled and you make it yourself, a laser on there will actually enhance what you can do with it. Now, this sled is used on one side of the blade only, and then the other side you blade another piece that is stationary. And so every movement is done from this side on this particular style sled. And so if you're going to use this on a different type of sled, I'm not sure how that will differ, how you would set it up or that sort of thing. But the way I do it here works real well for what I do with this table saw sled. Let me go over some things with you and I'll show you and you'll understand what I'm talking about. You may not be able to use this on another type of sled, but I think you can adapt it once you see what I'm doing with it. So keeping in mind that I'm using my Incra 5000, it has this track on it. And this track right here, T-track, for a hold down. Well, I have it back here, which is not really much of anything. Anything from around this circumference out here is not of any use for the sled. So that's where I'm going to mount my laser light. So I made this here. It's a flat plate, a base plate with a T-nut here and a wing nut on top. And then I built this up, put a T-track here so that this plate can be adjusted. And this is my mounting plate, like we talked in the first video about using the center pin and the magnetic base. So, and it goes on there like that. Now this is a little bigger washer. I found these in my hardware and I thought, oh, those will actually work even better than the 3/8 washer. So if you have a bigger washer, I would probably use it. It really does seem to work better on here. Gives me a much better base holding power when it's like this. So if you can do that, I would do that. So find some kind of fender washer to use. But other than that, I just epoxied it in after I drilled the hole and put the dowel in here that fit the center post. And then once I glued this in place, epoxied, everything works. So then this little block of wood has a T-bolt here, and this is a slot, and that's so that I could line this up where I want it to on my sled, because you want the center of this pin, the centering pin, you want it to be centered right over where your saw blade is. So you want it in line with it. So when I put it on here, it pushes up against the block here, and you push it up against the block here, and that way it always goes consistently in the same exact spot. And then just snug down the wing nut. Nothing to it, nothing fancy. I'm not going to beat it with a hammer, so that's more than enough. So then you take your laser and you drop it on that center pin, and now it's magnetized to my base, and this thing is now set up to be used. So let's calibrate it in. That only takes a couple of seconds also. So to calibrate it in, I just use one of these. So if I turn it on, you can see my line. Whoops, you can't see my line. There. Now you can see my line right here. And it shines up here. This is where we want to concentrate our line and pay attention to. And to be exact, we want to pay attention to where this plane, this surface, meets this vertical surface right here, this point. The blade is going to come through right here. This is zero clearance on the edge of my sled, so that blade's going to come right by here. So if I'm lined up right here with my beam, this beam is actually the width of my blade, because I use a 1/16 inch blade. And if you use the 1/8, it wouldn't affect what you do here. Depending on what cut you want to make, you can line this laser up to either side of your saw blade in just a couple of seconds, and then you can be accurate to either side of the blade. So you can cut from both sides of the blade accurately if you put a laser on your sled. That's one of the reasons why it actually improves your crosscut sled capability by having this. If all I was worried about is lining up to here, I can do that, because as long as the blade's at 90, then you're lined up to here. But I'm going to show you some other things that you have to consider if you're going to do some other things. So stick with me. So anyway, I want to make sure that this line is straight up and down when I start. So all I would do is, if I make sure that it's lined up, I just turn it off to a side here a little bit, put my square up, and I bring it up on that square, and I look for this line to be the same. And if I push it that way a little bit so the line gets smaller and thinner, I can really see how accurate it is going vertical. So this line is vertically aligned. If it wasn't, I would take this lens here and turn it and to line it up, because you can actually turn that line horizontal or vertical. You can turn it in any direction. So at this point, this thing is now exactly vertical. It only takes a second to check that, and if that's set, now you're good to go. The other thing you want to do now is you want to line up to this point with that, where this beam hits that point right there. Don't worry about any of this. When you set this up and this pin is now set up to be here, it'll always line up this way without any problem. So as long as you line up your beam to where you want the cut, wherever that blade is going to enter in here, you can line this up if you want so that you can project where that's going to cut instantly. So right now it's going to be cutting right on this edge because we'll have the blade at 90. So we just turn that till the line is just up next to here. So if I take and turn this up, now I'm going to take my square just so you can see how close I am. And I'm going to push this back until it stops. That means that it's now flush with the blade, to the left side of the blade, flush to this edge. And you can see there's just a hairline red right there. So I don't know if I can get much closer than that. This thing is now set to the left side of the blade of my saw. So now when I want to make a cut, I bring my cut line in, and this is my cut line. So let's assume this is the waist side and this is the cut side, the side I want. I'm going to cut on this line. Do I want to cut on lead the line, or do I want to cut the line away? And if I want to save it this piece, do I want to put it, so I want to line the left side of the blade up to here. So if I bring this over like so, and I'm going to cut it to the, let's say to the right side of the blade for the moment. I can bring this up, watch my pencil line, and as it just gets ready to kiss that red line, that's where I hold it. And if I do it there, that'll make this cut and leave that pencil line. If I want the pencil line to be cut off, I want to go to the left side of that pencil line for my cut. Take it off, then I slide it over until the line is completely in the red. As soon as I see that, as soon as it's just barely in the red, now I make my cut, and it will cut the line away and give you that exact cut. So now if this thing is, instead of wanting to cut and save this piece, you want to cut this piece. So this line here, you want to cut on this line here, but you want this piece here to be the size of what this line is. So then you just say, which side line am I cutting on? Well, if I'm cutting on the right side of the line, what I want to do is I set this up to the right side of my blade instead of the left. Now it just so happens my blade is a 16th inch blade. This is a 16th inch line, so I actually can just use the left side. If you had an 1/8 inch, then you would just turn that to line up to the blade, and then you could do the same thing. So now it's the left side of my line is lined up to the edge of the saw blade. So if I want to take and save this piece and I want to leave the line on here, then I just slide it up till the line is just touching the red. And now it's away from this here, but that's okay because we're cutting to the right side of the saw blade accurately at this point. And I can cut this piece, and this is my piece I want, and it'll be exactly the length it needs to be, and I don't have to depend on this edge here to cut this piece. So the laser helps me to be able to line up to either side of that blade if I want it to. I can get it to line up to the blade so that I can use the laser to line it up. And the beauty of that is that even at a 45, you can do that. So now, if I turn my blade to a 45 like it is here, my cut area, where it's going to cut this board, and you say, well, there's a 45 line. So if I line this up to this edge and try to cut it, that blade is going to go through here about a 1/2 inch over from this cut line. Means that trying to line this up to where that actual cut is going to be tricky. Well, with the laser beam, with the laser line, all you have to do is slide it over, bring this up, and slide it over so this point right here is where the blade and this line are touching, and then zoom this line in on that cut. And I put it right on the blade, and so it's just barely touching the very edge of the board right here. Now, come back, line this up here to this point, and when I cut that, it will cut that dead on that line. So now I can cut this line accurately, even though I tipped that blade. I don't have, even though this is normally my sight line, now my sight line, what I'm cutting is here, and it's further out because of the dynamics of turning the blade to 45 degrees. But I still do an accurate cut. As long as the bottom corner point is right there on my beam, then I know that that's where, I know now it's going to cut right there. I could actually tip this to 45 and set everything up that way and line the beam up on my pencil mark if I wanted to do that. But I really don't need to, because this bottom point right here is all that you need to pay attention to when you're trying to line up your blade to your laser line. So when I tip it back up, then this line, I can move it right back over to where it just barely touches this board here, and it's straight up and down here. So that point right there is where this thing is pointing. And that gives me my laser line again to know when to make my cut and where to make vertical cuts when I turn my blade back up. So what the laser does is it gives you the ability to sight in to where that blade is making contact when you put your wood on here, and that you can't always depend on the edge of the curve cut. When you turn it to an angle, that changes. And by doing what I did to set it up for a 45-degree cut and lining it up, laser, I could do that at any angle. I could do it at 10 degrees, because that will change it too. That's going to put your board a little further out away, hanging over your sled. And the steeper that angle, then the further away from your sled the starting cutting point is going to have to be. It has to move away. The laser will help you line that up. So if you understand this and everything, you might try this and see how it works for you. This thing is actually very cool. I like it a lot, and it's going to help with me doing some of these cuts when I really want the accuracy, because I can get this accuracy whether my fence is set at 0 to my blade or set at 45 degrees, and my saw blade can be set at any angle. I can line it up with the laser so I know where that cut is going to cut, so that I can use the laser beam to line my wood up to make my cut every time, and I can get an accurate cut on my board by using that laser light, much more than I could just by sighting into a groove on my miter sled. So this will give you a much better, much more accurate cut in the long run. Give it a try. You start using that laser light, I think you'll start seeing some of the things that I'm starting to see. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. This is actually kind of cool. So it's a new toy, and what I like about it is that I can still take this off, use it somewhere else, and if I need it, I can bring it back and just set it back up onto here real quick. It's not going to be on here where I can damage it or anything or get in the way. Most of the time I may not even need the laser, and if I don't, it only takes a second to take the adapter off and keep it off to the side, and I'll just keep it up on my board with all my other table saw accessories. So when I pull this sled out, if I need to use the laser light, I can also get this out and set it up in just a couple of seconds and use my laser light. If I don't need the laser light for what I'm doing, then I don't have to use this. I can just leave it hanging up on my accessory board. So anyway, I think mission accomplished, and I think it came off pretty well. This is my first video in the series of using this on all the different equipment around the shop and how we can put this little critter to work. I thought this was kind of neat, and I really learned a lot from it myself. I hope you did too. If you like this video, if you learned something here, hit that like button. I need all the help I can get. If you have any comments or any questions or any observations, let me know. That's what the comment section is for. One last point. When I built this and I put my laser here, you will notice that I put mine on the back. You really want that laser at the back here so you can see that point of contact where the blade is going to cut through the wood on the back side of the wood, because you can't really see up here. And if you put that laser out front on your sled, that's your point of contact. You have to depend on that line up above, and it makes it a little harder to line things up. So I think it works better from the back. So you might keep that in mind. But if you want to put yours on the front, you can probably still get it to work. And you can still apply all these different ways of being able to line it up to your blade, to either side of the blade, because that's what really gives this thing its power. What makes it work is that I can line this line up to any side of my blade, or at any angle where I'm going to make contact with that blade. I can find that point, line it up with my laser light, and then I can line my board up perfectly every time. So it really works great. Give it a try. I want to thank you for stopping by, though, really. I really appreciate it. Most importantly, though, come back again, because we're normally near done. I still got lots of other machines we're going to do this with, and this is only one thing. There's lots of other things we're going to do. It'll be fun. We'll see you again very soon. Bye.